Okay, I wanted to talk about the last night on the Disney Destiny, and it struck me as very similar to another experience I've had, and I haven't heard anyone else talking about this, so I want to know if I'm the only one that noticed this or that thinks this. It reminded me of the last night on board the Galactic Star Cruiser, and I'll tell you why. The last night on the Destiny, there is a show in the Grand Hall, or atrium as it's called on other ships. It's led by Zaya and Gamble on the Destiny, which are two of the characters that are on board the Destiny. And they're great, and anytime they're in a show, I recommend you going to see it. On other ships, it's called Till We Meet Again. On the Destiny, it's called Destiny Discovered. And they lead the show, and they are talking. Last night on board the Star Cruiser, one of the last things that happens is everyone gathers in the atrium for a final showdown between good and bad. Kind of also a summary of your experience, your cruise or your sailing or your voyage. And they're talking about the different forces, good and bad, on the Star Cruiser, good and evil. And yet sometimes, hopefully, even no matter which side you are working with, hopefully in the end, you're all working for, a greater good. And on the Destiny, same kind of thing, heroes and villains. There are heroes and villains, and no matter who you are siding with, so to speak, during your cruise, hopefully you're all working for a greater good in the end. And there's also, as Zaya and Gamble are talking on the Destiny, different characters were coming out and appearing and talking for a minute, like Loki appears on deck 5, suddenly he's got a spotlight on him and he talks for a second. And then some pirates pop out and spotlight on them on deck 4, and they talk for a minute. Same kind of thing happened on Star Cruiser. Different characters appear in different parts of the atrium. Stormtroopers unmasked. I think it was Sammy under there, if I'm remembering correctly. Spotlight on him for a second. Spotlight over here as they're talking to the different things. So very similar to me. They called out on the Star Cruiser different guests who may have interacted a lot with the crew, and other guests would have usually seen that happening. Like they might say, Cindy, she was so helpful as we were looking for Ray, and things like that. They would say things like that at the end of every voyage. They would find some guests to talk about specifically, call them out by name during this last little show. In the Destiny, they did the same thing. Zaya and Gamble called out a few different guest names, like, we loved working with so-and-so who was helping us defeat the dragon. There were some things like that. I'm sure that varies a little bit every time. But I just thought, the whole time I thought, this reminds me of Star Cruiser. Did anybody else think that?